Welcome to the Sharpest College Football Podcast, the Big Ten preview, the granddaddy of them all, as we call them, since the Rose Bowl is no longer the granddaddy of them all. But we mashed the two conferences together, the best of what was of the Pac-10, into this beautiful conference. I am BuckMetrics, joined as always by Robert Martin. And because it's the Big Ten, we of course have Isaiah Walker with us, definitely a made man in the Sharpest College Football Podcast universe. Isaiah, good to see you again. It's been a while since I've actually seen your face. Hope all is well up there in Chicago.
Thanks, Buck. Thanks, Robert. Always good to be joining you guys. And yeah, everything's been great in Chicago. Lots of busy summer for me, but I am really glad that we can get into college football and into a really exciting Big Ten. I think there's a lot of value in the Big Ten. I think there's a lot of excitement in the Big Ten, and I'm really excited to go over it.
Exactly. Robert, been maybe a few days since I've seen you. You got dressed up for the occasion. I'm not going to let you forget. Just a collared shirt. Is it not just warm and humid up there? What's going on? Or did you just have dinner with the in-laws?
No, I wore this the other day. I like it, and it's nice. But yeah, no, it's an extra special episode, the Big Ten episode. But it's
clearly.
Actually, I will say it's actually starting to get like cooler here already. Like it's already only.
Oh man.
What's the It's already only 21 degrees here today already. It's not Celsius, not Fahrenheit.
Yeah. You stumped about 90% of the people here. We're a Fahrenheit podcast for the most part. I'm sorry. Most of the listeners are. Okay. If you want a PDF of this or any other conference previews, preview decks, just go ahead and either leave your email address in the YouTube comments or hit me up on Twitter. I think it'd be useful to refer to it throughout the rest of the preseason and the regular season. Also, this is our glossary. This is the terms that we refer to through the previews and the regular season. So you might want to take a screenshot of this and save it and refer to it through January. We're going to break this up into two parts here. As I said, this is part one. I'm going to do them alphabetically so you can see who's in part one and part two here. We will go Illinois through Northwestern in alphabetical order. Robert, you might remember this is going to air before the MAC preview, I think, but I asked AI to drop us into, what was it, auto body repair shop gear for the MAC preview. So along the same lines, I asked Gemini to drop the three of us into a cornfield to celebrate the Big Ten. And I don't know. AI thinks I'm a movie star. AI thinks that Robert is like James Brolin from Sicario or something. And Isaiah, I got to say, you've been working out. The ink looks really good on you too, as does the facial hair.
I wish I had that kind of body.
Yeah, the wonders of AI. My goodness. But I don't know. Maybe next year it'll do a little better, but fun to be in the cornfield there with the three of us there. All right. Overview of college football's biggest conference here. Just one new head coach this year, Barry Odom at Purdue. Of the top 10 teams in 2024, only one quarterback has more than 4 returning starters. There's 5 total, but a lot of the experience is more towards the bottom here. Makes for an interesting dynamic in terms of quarterbacks in this conference. On the offensive line and defense, experience is, there's more experience than improvement. Pardon me, I'll get there eventually. Not a lot of improvement metrics here or here, but you got some green in the returning experience, which is interesting. And I think when we get into this in the SEC preview, I'll talk a little more about that. But overview, any first thoughts on the conference, Robert?
Yeah, it's the most Big Ten thing ever that all of the defenses are green. That's very classic Big Ten. But no, it is interesting that apparently the quarterbacks in this conference got rated a bit. Obviously, you lost a lot of them to basically the NFL. Ohio State's quarterback, NFL. Oregon's quarterback, NFL. They're not starters, but they are in the NFL. Same with some of the other schools. They had a lot of losses as well for some of that stuff. But some of these schools, it's a good thing their quarterback isn't returning, like Iowa or Michigan. Actually, no, Iowa wasn't bad. I meant more Michigan. But for some of them, yeah, it's good. So it's going to be interesting, and we'll have to see how that plays out. But I think a lot of these coaches are good. But the fact that defenses are strong, I suspect we're probably going to see some of these teams maybe regress a little on offense. We're going to see more of a bit classic or Big Ten with some of these teams.
Yeah, I agree. Isaiah, any overview thoughts that strike you?
It's going to be a great season in the Big Ten because it is so wide open. I think you look just at the chart here and you look at some of these numbers and at a very high level overview, there are a ton of teams on this list that I can realistically look at and say, boy, I could see them winning the conference. Boy, I could see them in the college football playoff. I could see them making noise in the college football playoff. it's not like last year where we were really locked onto one or two teams for the most part. We said, yeah, this is probably where it's going to go. I wouldn't be surprised if there are all kinds of outcomes: who wins the conference, who makes the playoffs, and that makes for a lot of fun. That makes for a lot of fun betting, and it makes for great watches. Should be a really good year for the Big Ten.
Yeah, one other thing I just noticed here is there's 5 teams that had significantly good luck, and in more visible conferences like this, where everybody, and we'll get to an example coming up in just a moment here, where everybody just takes last year and just fiddles around the edges and projects based on the margins. Not having visibility to that, you're gonna, I think, see some really big misses in terms of preseason predictions for a big conference like this.
Yeah,
To wit, oh, go ahead. Yes.
We'll add on that real quick, and I'll bring this up with multiple teams, but I think that's a great point because I've been looking over some of the win totals. I've been looking over some of the previews for a lot of these teams, and I think they do exactly that. I'm sure we'll cover it, but it's really easy to fall into. Here's what happened last year, and we're just going to go off of that. But this is, I think that's part of the reason why this conference is so wide open this year.
Yeah. I think your category's there too.
Yeah.
Special guest.
All right. One of those teams that I think is getting overrated, although not in the season win total market, is Illinois. I just got to bring up, Joel Klatt has top 10 in his post-spring, top 25. I just don't get it, and just here's my case against it. I had him as the 11th best in the conference, not nationally, in the conference last year. My metrics are not the be-all, end-all, but I think they're better than Joel Klatt in May. One of these teams with significant good luck as well. Doug Altmaier did have the second best apex among returning full-time starters, but this is literally just an average running game last year, literally 9th in the conference, an average improvement metric. I don't see a big reason to expect huge improvement in the running game. To that point, there's going to be more pressure on the running game because they lose almost 1,000 yards just in 2 guys that they lost, Pat Bryant and Zachary Franklin. They do add Hudson Clement. I don't know if it's Clement. I don't know. I'll defer to the Canadian on this podcast. That is Clement, where it's 21 degrees. Okay.
Clement or something, yeah.
Okay. Their defensive rating was 16th in the Big Ten. This wasn't a good defense. This was a bad defense by the Big Ten standards. They have an average improvement metric. I don't see them taking a big step forward here. This conference, and I don't want to spoil everything, from Indiana through Washington, I'm pretty high. I'm probably a little more high in Washington than most people. This is a brutal stretch. Indiana, USC. Okay, apologies, I'd say a little breather here.
Except for Purdue took them to overtime in Champaign last year and put 49 points up on them.
Okay, yeah, because it's not a good defense. And Ohio State and Washington, I think if they win, they would do well to win 3 of those games really well. I think 2 is more realistic. Season win total is 7.5. The over's getting crushed. I think the number's right. I think the juice here is just goofy. I said slightly overvalued because I think the number's right. There's no way I would lay minus 185 to take the over here. I think this is, again, just an average Big Ten team. Robert, are you going to set me straight and just say you're angry there, Mr. Trojan?
So first thing I will say, I guess for research purposes or also because I was bored, I actually watched Joel Klatt's ranking show thing. And note to Joel Klatt, if he's watching this, I'm sure he is. In his rankings, so in the graphic you found, I'm fairly sure that's from Twitter. They have the teams like horizontally, 1, 2, 3, 4. In his ranking thing, they have him on like a giant 1,000-inch screen or something. The rankings go down, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then it's 6. So like literally when I was watching on the screen, it's like Notre Dame is 2 because it was like 6. So Joel Klatt, if you're listening, fix that for your show. Thank you. Anyways, moving on to Illinois. No, this is the interesting thing, right? This was an overlooked team last year. It was pretty good. They ended off the season, I believe, with a bowl win against South Carolina, which is, again, a kind of SEC team that we like. I think people just assume that, now they're on the way up and they're going to be a legitimate contender here. But I don't know about that. The thing is, there are a lot of good teams in the Big Ten. Could this team be a legitimate title contender? Sure. But at the same point in time, like, Illinois has been good off and on. The best season they had was 8-5. They took a step back, and then they got up to here. They had a pretty easy schedule last year. They had a game against Kansas, but they got Kansas in a year where Kansas was pretty bad. They took down Nebraska when Nebraska was having an off week. They beat Michigan when Michigan hadn't really figured it out too well. and then they lost to Minnesota, and then they beat up the rest of their Big Ten stuff. So I think we just need to. I think people are going to be like, oh, they beat an SEC team in a bowl, therefore they must be good. But like Luke Altmaier, like when he replaced their quarterback, I think this is his third year now at Illinois. We weren't particularly impressed with Altmaier, and now all of a sudden we're just assuming this is supposed to be like a championship caliber team. Could this team? Like I think the path for this team would be like the Indiana path, where they sneak in as like the fourth best Big Ten team. But this is going to be a really tough year. Like already you're looking at a good Notre Dame team and a good Ohio State team, good Oregon team, good Penn State team. Like those top three and a good Michigan team. Like that alone is enough. But then obviously Indiana's also going to be good. Like they play Indiana week 4. That game could actually functionally be an elimination game here. That's the level that the Big Ten is going to be this year. And any trip up there, losing to Indiana, even USC, like that's nothing. That's not a gimme either. So like the level of the Big Ten this year, it's going to be really difficult to be the fourth best team in the Big Ten, and I just don't know if they can do that.
Yeah, you brought up something that, and honestly, I just didn't pay attention to the Bulls last year because none of them were bettable, and the playoffs were enough for me. Isaiah, I'll throw it to you. It seems every year there's one team that they get really overrated because of a big Bull win last year. Is that kind of what I'm missing here?
You know what? Okay, so the first thing is I know a lot of great people on Illini Twitter, and they're instantly going to roast you because you got the quarterback's first name wrong. So it's Luke Altmaier, not Doug Altmaier. I'm gonna save you from Illini Twitter here. Here's the thing on Illinois. I think you put it really well. I think this is a team that's not overvalued in the win total, but maybe they're getting a little bit too much hype as far as the juice goes on talking a little bit further down the line. Now, I like Illinois on the win total. Probably would not play -1. I don't really like playing futures when they're above -160 anyway, so I wouldn't pay 185. I put a little bit of money. I put another win on it, and I took over 8.5 because I was getting +160 for that. So I saw some value there. Yeah. I think that's how I play Illinois, right? Because I'm looking at them as like a boom or meh. They're not going to bust. I think this roster is still too good. I think that Bielema has proven that he can be sustainable here at Illinois, which like a lot of people have not been able to do, and he should get a lot of credit for that. The way I look at their schedule too, right? This roster still has a lot of talent. I was trying to figure out Altmaier going into this year, and I do think his improvement last year is sustainable. Like just the way they schemed for him, the way they played with him, it looked like he was more comfortable. It looked like he was not rushing his throws, right? Like all the mistakes that you thought from him early in his career, it was like rushing throws, making dumb decisions, right? Their offensive line is really good, so he should have lots of time to work. I think this offense is going to be good. Bielema knows what he's doing at defense. So then we look at the schedule, right? This is a schedule that could either be pretty challenging or it could end up being like Indiana's, right? Last year, where we looked at their Big Ten schedule last year and said, okay, there's some tricky things, and those tricky teams ended up not being as good as they were, right? So USC could be good, could be meh. You get them at home. Indiana, are they going to be really good again? It is on the road, so you never want to take that for granted. Maybe they take a step back and you can get that game. I would not tell them to count out Purdue because, again, a 1-11 team put up 49 points on you. Now, maybe that was Ryan Walters' Super Bowl. I don't know. Ohio State at home. That's going to be tough, but dumber things have happened to Ohio State in the past. I can tell you very well. I am high on Washington as well. So, yeah, that's a tricky stretch. And then you have Duke in the non-con, right? The ACC is not exactly good, but that's a tricky non-con game. Credit to them for playing that game, right? So there's a large range of outcomes here. Now that ending stretch is real nice. Rutgers, Maryland at Wisconsin Northwestern. That's a pretty cushy way to close. If you can get to that Washington game with 4 or 5 wins, then you feel real good about how the season ends. But I really do like the win total over on this. I put a little bit of money on them as a playoff team. Again, I think boom or meh is the way I'm going with Illinois. And that's tough for me to say as a Purdue fan. Like, again, last year I had to talk about Indiana. This year I have to talk good about Illinois. If Bert is listening, please unblock me on Twitter. I promise. I'm not a bad guy.
Yeah, he and Joel Klatt can talk about our podcast together since they're both watching here. Even though I don't agree with the play, I love how you've structured that in terms of it's boom or bust, and I'm not going to lay a bunch of money for that kind of bet. I like the playoff play or just like the over a higher number at plus money. That's, I think, a really smart way to do it. And just there's not enough people that look at it that way too. That's why sometimes, like in the ACC, that's why I bet on Miami, just because. All right, if the Heatherman thing works out, they're a steal to win the conference. Now there's Mario and all that, and I don't want to make this a Mario pod, but same thing. If there's proof of concept, you're way beyond just like a one win here or there. I like the way you've played that there. That's smarter than me. Good job.
So should we just, if you are betting on Mario, should we just spoil us now and say you're also betting on James Franklin?
No. There's only so much of that one guy can take. All right, Indiana. Obviously, everybody knows they had an awesome debut season with Curt Cignetti. They did have significant good luck. What's interesting is I had that Maryland game kind of a toss-up. I don't even remember that being a close game, interestingly. They should have lost the Washington game, according to the post-game metrics, which is interesting. Washington had an amazing ability to do themselves in. Stay tuned to part 2 on that. Don't overlook the fact that you have a much better quarterback. This is not to crap on Curtis Rourke, but you had a guy in Curtis Rourke who had 100 apex at Ohio. I think 100 apex in the MAC versus a 112 apex. Oops, where's my laser? There we go. A 112 apex in the ACC. I think that this is a huge upgrade at quarterback. And again, Rourke did very good. I just think that you're starting with a higher floor with Mendoza here. He actually had at Cal, basically his numbers. He had a 123 apex plus. That will get it done for, especially a program that really doesn't value offense that much in Cal. This team had the 8th best passing game in all of FBS by my numbers. Elijah Surratt returns. They are the 5th best in 2025, Ryan. They're 8th in the Big Ten in running game, so that's a little bit of a concern, but Jesus, it's year one. Remember, they were on a pretty big rebuild on the offensive line last year. The defense was great. It was great. Good enough. It was tied for 3rd in the Big Ten overall, and a very good defensive conference. 3rd in pass defense, tied for 1st in run defense. The schedule's not nearly as kind this year. They're at Oregon, and they're at Penn State. I think that, I don't know. We've got a tougher schedule, and we have some luck regression that should happen, although you're looking at a better quarterback. The season went till late and a half. I think that this is just showing the market is still, I don't know, doubting Cignetti. I don't get it. I think this is notably undervalued. I don't know if it's bettably, but I'll tell you this, the proverbial, if Robert gave me $100 and said bet one way or another, I definitely would take the over here at a little bit of plus money too. Isaiah, what do you think about the Hoosiers?
Yeah. Now I have to talk about. I talked good about Illinois. Now I have to talk good about Indiana. Indiana was one of my best bets last year. The over 5.5 wins was a joke, especially given the schedule. But just given Cignetti's resume and given what they had coming in, that was just that might have been one of the worst set futures lines I've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it cashed 6 games in.
Yeah.
I am going to go to bat for Cignetti here because I've never seen a football team break the college football media sphere more than Indiana did last year. When you have ESPN putting Indiana grad Heather Dinich as their number one propagandist as to why this team's not good, why this team doesn't belong in the playoff, there is just something. They went 11-1 in the. I don't care who you play. When you go 11-1 in the Big Ten, you make the college football playoff, especially a 12-team field. If you want to have the argument that they wouldn't have made a 14 field, that's fine. We can have that argument. It's 12-team field. There was never a world where they weren't getting in, and yet people were trying to tell me that a 9-3 Ole Miss team that lost to Kentucky should be getting in the playoffs over them. It's a joke. You can't watch that team and tell me they didn't deserve the playoff game. Right. And again, I don't care what they did against Ohio State. Yeah, they played 2 very good teams, and they lost to those very good teams. They weren't particularly competitive with those very good teams. Those teams also played for a national title.
Exactly.
And as I often tell people with the NCAA basketball tournament, the result in the postseason does not justify getting in or getting out. North Carolina in basketball last year only won 1 game in the top 30, got into the tournament, won a game. They still didn't deserve to get in. So it's the same thing with Indiana. They deserved to make the playoff. Curt Cignetti deserved to make the playoff with his team, which is incredible. In year 1 at Indiana, the losingest program in the history of college football. Let's take that into this season now. The market, I agree with you, is saying, okay, you made the playoff. Is this sustainable? I think we see a lot of times like somebody breaks onto the scene. I'm thinking like your TCU, right? Your Michigan State. You break into the playoffs, and then you just go back to being nobody. This team is too good to go back to being nobody. This roster is stacked. Mendoza. I'm sorry, I can't pronounce it. He's going to be really
I misspelled good. It. That didn't help you, so sorry.
Oh, yeah, so it is Mendoza. Okay, you made me
Yeah.
double. Yeah, this roster is too good for them to just take a step back. Now, if you are trying to talk yourself into reasons to bet the under, the one thing I want to tell you is, even if that under hits at 8-4, I don't see them being worse than 8-4. By the way, that's still a really good year. Like people are going to be like, "Oh, look at that, the under hit." You went 8-4. Gosh, if my team went 8-4, I'd be over the moon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a really question to me. It's a question of 4 games: Illinois, at Iowa, at Oregon, at Penn State. The one thing that Cignetti needs to do is stop writing checks that you aren't able to cash right now. You went on College Game Day and you talked about how you beat every ranked team you played. You didn't play any ranked teams. And then you got embarrassed. So you have your chance now. You're going to have Illinois coming to town. That's going to be a huge game, like Robert said. It could be That could be a playoff elimination game right there. Don't sleep on at Iowa. A lot of really good teams go to Iowa and lose. And then you got the 2 really big ones, the at Oregon and at Penn State. And I will say, I think this is going to be a really good team again. The only reason I didn't put a full unit on it. I bet a little bit on the under because I got it at -105 when I got it. Wow. I got it way early. So the juice has really moved to the under, and I don't think I'd be laying -140 on under 8.5. And again, I want to say this to the Indiana people: that is not a bet to say I think you're going to be bad. That is strictly a question of, okay, Cignetti, you've talked your shit. Now it's time to back it up and show me a win at. First of all, show me a win at Iowa. I think you have to win that one, obviously, and then beat one of those other 3 teams. Beat Illinois. Everybody can shut up. Especially if you beat Oregon at Oregon or you beat Penn State at Penn State, then nobody can talk. And everybody's going to forget the fact that I guess you're afraid to play Virginia. Don't give me the financial decision. Don't give me the we're just doing with the SEC thing. Come on, man. Look at this non-conference. Like you think you're mad at people. You're mad at people saying you didn't play anybody, and this is your non-conference, and then you cancel the game with one of the worst teams in a bad ACC. So that's my Indiana rant. I still think they're going to be really good this year.
Yeah, let me just, to the point about the non-conference and the conference schedule. I think that they're probably pretty comfortable favorites in 10 of these games, obviously except for Oregon and Penn State. Robert, let me just ask you to get you started on Indiana. How surprised would you be if Indiana wins one of those games at Oregon or at Penn State?
No, not particularly. I'm just thinking here. No, okay, so they didn't. So I was trying to remember because there was a couple. I remember a James Franklin team lost to an Indiana team a couple times. That wasn't the last time they played. That was like 2 times ago. That was back in the COVID year.
That was in the COVID year.
I remember that. Yeah. That was Michael Penix Jr. and he did that insane reach over the it's a bit of history there 4 years ago. But no, here's the thing: like Oregon, we're not at Oregon yet. We're not at Oregon yet alphabetically, so we're getting there. But in Penn State as well. But I don't think either of them is going to, with maybe the exception of Penn State, I think Oregon will be maybe slightly worse than they were last year, possibly. And Penn State, I don't think they're going to be that much improvement. But look across this board. The only red thing is that you thought they got a little bit lucky last year. Kurt Cignetti came to Indiana, took one of the worst teams in all of college football, one of the worst records historically in all of college football, and brought them to the playoff in 1 year with 1 loss. Did things we thought impossible. And all of that, by the way, it's because he grabbed a quarterback out of the MAC and got him to an Apex Plus of 165 and went 11-1, only losing to Ohio State. That's nuts. Just straight up, that's insane. And I think a lot of people, a lot of analysts, we so badly want to fade that. We're like, okay, there's no way. That's so fluky. We're like, gotta be regression. There's no way. But look across that bar. It's all green. It's 100% all green. And I would even argue that Mendoza is an upgrade at quarterback over Curtis Rourke. Like 100%. Like he did amazing things at Cal. Now, Is Cal good? No, he's gonna have a better team now. Like he had 123 Apex in what I was about to say the Big 12, but no, they are in the ACC, which is worse, but
Yeah.
that's fine. They're no against not a horrible bunch of horrible teams, right? That's an upgraded quarterback. The defense is better. The O line is better, and you kept a ton of your pieces from last year. I think in some ways, I think you could think of it as this was a very young team that I think, and you could see it in the Ohio State Notre Dame game, where I don't think they thought they were the best. I think they thought they were good, and I think they knew they could beat up the other teams. But like you could see it in the Ohio State and the Notre Dame game where they got a bit nervous, and I think they didn't think they could win those games, and they didn't. They came close to Notre Dame, but then they were close with Ohio State for a bit, and then Ohio State finally broke through and took care of them. But this is the thing. I think the fact that they were able to get from there as still one of the worst teams in all of college football the year before is insane. It just speaks to how good he is as a coach. And if he had lost a bunch of stuff, if that was like peak Cignetti, if there was like a bunch of graduations, and the only thing that, like, if their quarterback was like a first round pick, I don't even think Curtis Rourke got drafted in the NFL. Maybe like the 7th round or something. He's probably an undrafted free agent somewhere. That's the level of quarterback he had. Fernando Mendoza, next year's quarterback class is a bit stacked, but like theoretically, you could see him going in like the 4th or 5th round. Like he's getting better pieces across the board. Yeah, I could see this being an 11-1 team. I'd circle at Penn State for the win. I think avoiding Ohio State is always nice. Avoiding Michigan is also really nice. I think Illinois is going to be extremely important. That game is going to be insanely important that weekend. But at Iowa is also going to be important, and Oregon, and then Penn State. But I could see them going through and winning that. Honestly, looking down this list, it's really hard to find the third loss. And even if you do lose 3, then you still cash the over 8.5. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing. You're still over the 8.5. So this team, I think honestly the reason why there's so much on this is because everybody just wants to say, okay, there's no way he can repeat that again. We're gonna fade it. And I will say that if he goes 11-1 and or even 10-2 and either makes the Big Ten championship game or just misses it, he's not the coach here next year. Like 1,000%. There's a bunch of teams. Wisconsin would be one for sure. Potentially Florida. One of Florida or LSU, depending on who wins that game, is whichever the game when they play is going to be firing their coach. That's another one. He's going to be in the Big Ten or SEC in a legitimate school. Like he's going to have like legitimate resources next year or probably the year after that. Well, it's going to be if you put him at a school with here you go, here's $100 million, go win a championship. That's terrifying.
Yep.
I'll say too, Indiana does have a lot of money. So, yeah, it would be tough for him to I'm just going to say it right now. Florida's going to be looking for a new coach. I'm sorry.
I agree.
I'm not buying that at all. It'll be tough for them to keep him if he does go 10-1 or 10-2. The other thing about him, I get something about him that he actually does want to be here. There's a lot of times where you get a hint from a coach where it's, this is my stepping stone, even if I really do something special here. There is part of me that thinks that he wants to be here. And also, if you go 10-2 at Indiana after going 11-1, and plus with this schedule, like 10-2, that's no fluke. Not against this schedule. You can't say anything against that. And if you can do that at Indiana, do you really want to go down to Florida where they're going to be begging to fire you if you go 9-3 against a tougher schedule? He's got a good thing here, man. And that pains me to say it. It really does. But those numbers speak for themselves. I don't care how bad the schedule is. I don't care how much you want to talk about how they didn't play anybody. You don't get those numbers by accident.
Yeah.
Again, I agree with you, man. This is a really good program right now, and they've got a good thing going here. I wouldn't be shocked to see them break out again.
Yep.
Also, this goes back to Illinois, too. There is no Indiana of 2025, so if people could stop saying that, that would be great.
Yeah.
We are not going to see anything like what Kurt Cignetti did last year. That doesn't happen. It is that special.
It was a college football comment.
Yeah.
All right. A little less fiery and controversial because it's Iowa is Iowa. Totally overlooked is that the Iowa offense was functional. Also overlooked is this defense was nowhere near as good as what we've been accustomed to. And I don't know if it's just coincidental or a fact of life where they try to do more on offense with some success and maybe just the defense wasn't as good as a result. I don't know. But there's still all right, they got a new quarterback. I'm not thrilled about a 115 Apex in FCS. especially in the Big Ten. There's a lot of people that are in love with Gronowski and his accomplishments, but that's basically what Cam Ward did in Incarnate Word. And let's not forget, Cam Ward was really not that bueno his first year at Washington State. I think people are getting a little ahead of themselves about the Gronowski effect here. They catch Indiana, Penn State, and Oregon, all three of those, but at least they have them all at home, which is a nice break. This is, I guess I'd call it a tricky or a troubling stretch. Penn State, Minnesota's a little bit of a breather, but then you have Oregon and USC. Just that's 3 or 4 are pretty tough. The season win total is 7.5. The under is getting crushed. I think that's reasonably valued. We know the whole Iowa joke book. We've written it and rewritten it and published it and all that stuff. I think it's going to be pretty much an Iowa year where they can beat almost anybody, but it'll be ugly and they'll do it. I don't know. It's the Iowa season. I see no reason to be for anything different for an Iowa season because of Gronowski, I guess, is the shorthand there. Isaiah, you got anything more on Gronowski than I do other than my singular number?
I always am a little bit cautious, and we had the same thing with Minnesota last year, right? We had a guy coming in from the FCS, and they're like, "Oh, this is the best FCS quarterback in all of FCS." And then game one, it was like, "Oh, you're in the Big Ten now."
Yes.
And it was noticeable. Like, the game speeds up, man. These are good players, but it's a different game. Now, I do like him, like, overall. I've seen enough to think that he can be the guy, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's some growing pains. Right now, the good news is 2 of your non-conference games are complete tune-ups. The bad news is you have to play Iowa State at Iowa State in the middle of that. That's not great. Then, as you mentioned, you get the 3 hardest games of your Big Ten schedule at home, right? Indiana, Penn State, Oregon. And it's Kinnick Stadium, man. Dumb stuff happens in Kinnick Stadium. Like, we all know that. The interesting thing about last year was, like, so how many years have we been going on the Big Ten, on this Big Ten podcast, where Robert goes, yeah, but what if this is the year the defense regresses? That was last year. The defense regressed. Ironically, it was the offense getting significantly better that saved him. It's amazing what happens when you fire the coach's son. With all of this, they still went 8-5 last year. They went 6-3 in the Big Ten. And so I just look at that juice on the under. That's weird, man, because, like, we know what Iowa is under Kirk Ferentz. This is a 7-5 to 8-4 team. And if you're giving me, so I got Iowa over 7.5 at plus 135. If this is an Iowa team, then that tells me value, right? Like, I think the defense is not going to get worse. It should. We know what Iowa does, right? So even if the quarterback is not everything he's hyped up to be, it's Iowa. You don't win games on the quarterback. I like the value on that over there. And we might get into it later, but I think some of these teams on this on the schedule I'm a little bit less high on than you, so I think that there's plenty of chances for Iowa to get those 8 wins here.
All right. Robert, you might remember in Conference USA, I will repeat it, Conference USA, I pointed out that the Missouri State, I will say that again, the Missouri State quarterback had an apex of 150 in FCS.
Yeah.
That's what I want to see. I don't have Isaiah's degree of optimism at all here. I'm sorry to make the case again, but...
Yeah, I will say that, again, 115 apex is, again, you'd want to see a lot higher. I think, I don't remember what Cam Ward's apex was, but I think it was higher than this, I think. And
it was about the same, like 109 or 110 or something like that.
Oh, and it was, okay. I thought...
An Incarnate Word, yeah.
And I thought it was higher, but you generally want to see a bit higher of an apex. I feel like at least 115 is probably, as compared to last year, probably going to be an average to below average Big Ten quarterback, which is fine for what they're doing. Like, they're not going to ask him to be Cam Ward. They're not going to ask him to be Cam Ward. They're just going to ask him to throw the ball sometimes, be like, cool, it's 3rd and 5, throw the ball 6 yards. That's it. And that's definitely doable. But again, with Iowa, though, we have this. It just feels every year where it's just, oh, okay, they're like, they win every game they're supposed to win, and then they lose every game they're supposed to lose. And like last year, and the same thing, right? Lost to Iowa State, lost to Michigan State. That was a bit random, and UCLA. But like, this is the thing, right? You can pencil in the losses now. They're not better than Oregon. They're not better than Penn State. I'd throw in Indiana in that list as well. I also don't think they're better than Iowa State. And at Nebraska, at some point, Nebraska is going to be good. I think they probably will be good this year. They should have been better last year than they were, but at some like Nebraska is a dangerous spot, and even USC should be better this year too. So that's already what that's now we're looking at 6 losses there already. So the 7.5 is I don't want to touch it. I think it's reasonably valued. But the thing is, the defense did regress last year. If he can bring the defense back to what it was before, if the defense can improve, sure, yeah, okay. Then it's only losses to like Oregon, Penn State, and Indiana, and then this is a 9-3 team, and whatever. They're not making the playoffs, but whatever. But if not, and if the offense stays the same, but if this team gets into shootouts with a USC or a Nebraska or an Iowa State, they're not going to win that. That's the thing. This is the thing. Like last year, their offense got better. Okay, they lost 7-35 against Ohio State. That's the problem. Is that okay? It was better, but like in those games, they still couldn't. Their defense regressed. Like they still couldn't stop them on defense fully, and then they couldn't put up anything on offense against good defensive teams. So that's I think the problem.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because when I look at what I think this team would do based on what I see from their rosters, it's weird because it looks like I would expect the offense to get better and I would expect the defense to either be the same or maybe get a little bit worse, which is they have a lot of playmakers that are good outside of the quarterback, right? They actually have a good wide receiver unit this year, I think. There's a lot of really talented guys. They're going to have really good tight ends because that's what Iowa does, right? Now, the secondary should be really good. The secondary is really deep, but there's some concerns on the defensive line. There's concerns on the run game, right? So I think that's your argument against Iowa if you're going to make it is, the concerns are on the run game and the defensive line. That's like kind of what Iowa does. So it's okay. What is the balance here on the offense getting better and the defense staying the same or getting worse versus who they're playing? It's just tricky to say. So I can entertain arguments both ways. I don't think this is going to be anything special. I will agree with that.
Yeah, you make a good point, though, both you guys, in that, all right, maybe if Gronowski could just let Iowa be Iowa and just convert on 3rd and 4, where you're just like, God, I'm so tired of playing these guys. I hate it. That's kind of all you need to do, right? You don't need Caleb Williams running down the field 60 yards, just setting everybody's hair on fire. It's the totally opposite. Just don't be Spencer Petras.
Yeah, and I'm just like looking at this. If you want the one place where it's, Iowa probably shouldn't have won that game, but then it's a night game at Kinnick Stadium and dumb things happen, I'm just looking at that Penn State game because, man, that just feels like the day where the Iowa defense forces like 3 interceptions off Drew Aller and something really dumb happens and they win on a punt return for a touchdown or something. Like, I don't know, man. That's screaming Iowa to me.
Weird things happened in that game particularly, too. I think one of those games did 6-4 one year, didn't it?
6-4 in 2004. One of those safeties was intentional.
I don't think this will take too long. Maryland, rebuilding year. Malik Washington is the new quarterback. He's a true freshman. Their top returning wide receiver is Octavian Smith with a Ryan of 135. For those of you who are new, that's not good if that's your best returning receiver. The defense is red in all these metrics. Again, if you're new, that's really bad. It's let's say troubling. Season win total is 4.5. The under's taking a lot of money. I still think they're overvalued. Let's just do the schedule game here real quick. Okay, say they beat FAU. Say they win these first 3. I know it's early, and they beat Rutgers. I don't think they're close to any. I just don't see the 5th win at all. They're just a clear cut below everybody else. I'm surprised that under's not taking more money. You agree with me, Isaiah? Just you tell me what you see here about Maryland.
Man, this I have a very good friend who's a Maryland alum, although I don't think he really cares that much about football at this point. I think this team might be a special kind of bad. I'm going to be completely honest with you because you think about all of those defensive metrics being red. Even Purdue didn't have all 4 of their defensive metrics being red last year. That is a crazy kind of bad defense. And, man, everything on the offense that they have screams mediocre. Like, you do have some potential with some of the transfers you pulled. But, like, again, then you're relying on your transfers, and that's a lottery ticket. I'm really concerned the fact that we have a true freshman quarterback here. And Mike Loxley has proven nothing when he doesn't have Talia Tagovailoa. And even when he had him, he noticeably underperformed. They should have been much better with him than they were. Like, I think there is a really good case to say this team doesn't win a Big Ten game. Like,
Wow.
at Rutgers and at
Yeah.
UCLA are your two best options, and they're not going to be favored in either one of them. And I think at minus 130, I'm more than willing to swallow that juice because that's betting on two Big Ten wins. Essentially, that's betting on them winning at UCLA and at Rutgers because I don't think they're coming close in any of these other games. Like, this could go downhill really fast. And then you start asking about Loxley's job security.
Mm-hmm.
Because really, I don't think he's done anything to deserve. Like, if this is a disaster season, I don't think he's done anything to deserve more time, personally.
Yeah. I think he almost benefited by being in the tough Big Ten East, where it's like, what else? What more do you want? Now it's wide open. It's a little more sunshine exposing him. Robert, not a lot to build on here. When Isaiah said mediocre, I think he might have been a little generous in terms of the foundation.
Yeah, 100%. I really feel like this is the bottom falls out year for this. I have Phil Steele in front of me. I'll give Mike Loxley's record here and overall. And actually, just reading this, I'm shocked at this. He's 33-41 at Maryland, and somehow only 35-67. So he has 2 more wins when not being the head coach of Maryland, and somehow 16 more losses. So why was he coach of Maryland? But anyways, no, this is, again, you said it perfectly there, right? They benefited so much from being in the Big Ten East. It's like, we're going to lose to Ohio State, we're going to lose to Michigan, we're going to lose to Penn State. What more do you want? That's 3 losses, right? And it's just like, yeah, he won some other games, so it's pretty good. But now it's, hey, guess what? You don't have to play Ohio State this year. So you don't have to play even Penn State this year. So why are we not competitive? And that was the reason why. I think, honestly, Tagovailoa just completely saved his job. And the fact that he's not there anymore means that this is going to go south real fast. And it went south last year at 4-8. And now that the defense is worse, I think this is his last year at Maryland. I'm not. And honestly, FAU, we'll talk about more FAU in another thing, but they have a new head coach. They might be fun. I wouldn't they could put up a bit of a fight there. So honestly, yeah, this could be the bottom falls out. And you've got a lot of Big Ten teams that are really desperate. And if this Maryland team is bad, everybody's going to be we need to come out with a win. We need to come out and win. Like Wisconsin, they'll need to come out with a win on this. Rutgers is not a bad team. They're going to need to come out with a win in there too. And then you're going to have the regular ones at Illinois. They're going to need a wins. Indiana, Michigan. Your easiest games are at Michigan State, at Rutgers, at UCLA, at Wisconsin. But even then, all those teams need wins. They're we need to win these games because they need their jobs on the line too, right? So if this team is bad, this is just bottom falling out.
Yeah. I don't know where I don't see how do I say this? I'm going to spoil the SEC because I say this about another team, but I don't see how they beat a team that they're not significantly better than. The example I like to use is when Army almost beat Oklahoma in 21, I think it was, or 19 on either side of COVID. I don't know if you remember that. Army, I think they took Oklahoma to overtime in Norman.
Yeah.
And there's a big disparity, but you know how it happened. Oh, they did the Army thing. If Maryland does the Maryland thing, they might go 2-10. I just don't know how do they win? I was about to
say too, in an absolute worst case scenario, we're just talking Armageddon. Not only is FAU interesting, did we forget that Northern Illinois won in South Bend last year?
Yeah, they really got
I know we don't want to translate. I know they could be bad too, but I'm just saying dumber things have happened.
Yeah.
This is not Notre Dame. Yeah, I think honestly, if you ask me who the worst team in the Big Ten is, I think there's a really strong argument for Maryland. And that's saying something when we get to part 2.
I was going to say, thank you for bringing that up. Okay, enough about them. More interesting team, really interesting, Michigan. I want to do these first 2 bullet points in tandem here because everybody's talking about the second bullet point. Hey, they got a quarterback now. Great. We think they do. Is it immediate? We've seen it happen sometimes. More often it takes a year to really make it happen. Let's not overlook the first bullet point here. Chip Lindsey, When has anybody ever said, gosh, I just wish we had that Chip Lindsey offense at my program? The answer would be never. As this is where the numbers get a little tricky. You have to put your three-dimensional hat on here. For as much as their passing game sucked, their run game should have been better than tied for fifth. Now, that becomes tricky because if you're not a threat to pass the ball, it's easier to defend the run, so maybe that's a little deceiving, but I don't know. Everybody knows that Army runs the ball, and they had no problem doing it last year. They do have the second highest improvement metric on the offensive line in the Big Ten, so that should help, and the new quarterback. I'm just not sure to how much. I had them the second rated defense in the Big Ten last year, and again, they might even be better if the offense is a little more functional. They have what I call a generous conference schedule, considering they have Ohio State. They miss Penn State. They miss Oregon. It's definitely doable, I'll put it that way. Especially this stretch right here. My goodness, this is a soft underbelly of the whole conference. You get them all in a row here. Week 4 at Nebraska is going to be, I think, sneaky important to me. I'm not really going to put too much stock into at Oklahoma. I don't like the chances of a true freshman quarterback at a tough place against a really good defensive coach and a good defense. At Nebraska's different because I think that's the game they need to win by 2 scores, or else I'm going to have questions about the rest of the year, about the first 2 bullet points. I think the 8.5 is maybe not an unfair number, but the laying 180 to go over is crazy. This is just a volatile situation. There's just too much faith for my blood in Bryce Underwood. It just, maybe he's talented, maybe he's not. Being talented and being ready are 2 different things. So I can't bet it at all. It's going to be a fascinating watch, but there's a lot of, I don't know. This is a better watch than a bet as far as I'm concerned. You have a smarter take than that, Robert? I'm sure you do. It's not tough.
No, I mean, I do like this team, but not necessarily because of Bryce Underwood. I think they also do have Mikey Keene, who is not a bad quarterback from Fresno State.
Fresno.
Yeah,
Right. Yep.
Here's the thing. Could Bryce Underwood be really good? Yeah, he could be. And they could now, but that being said, usually freshman quarterback who literally he just enrolled months ago. I think he just enrolled last year, like early this year. He's basically just been on campus for months now at this point. Usually you don't see a quarterback like that come out and start lighting the league up on fire. But as the point has been made, he doesn't need to. This defense is a good defense. They had 0 offense last year, and they were very competitive in a lot of games, kind of like pulling the Iowa in many ways. Like, this is the thing. They were a lot better last year than I thought they were going to be. I thought the bottom was going to fall out in this Michigan team, and it was a lot. I underestimated this Michigan team last year. I don't plan on making the same mistake again. I've taken a couple of tail probabilities for Michigan. I think I got like a free $10 bet on Michigan to win the playoff at like 40-1 early on in the season. That's long gone. I like something like that, but if this team were to be if this team beats Oklahoma and they beat Nebraska, yeah, okay, you've got at USC and you got Washington and then you got Ohio State. But if this team is legitimately competitive, this could be a team that you would not want to play in the playoff, right? This could be a very dangerous team if they do put it together. And a lot of question marks on offense, but if they do put it together, watch out, this team could be like absolutely terrifying. So that's my take on it.
As you were saying that, the Bryce Underwood thing is just so pivotal here. Isaiah, let me get you started on Michigan with this. If you say, hey, there was this freshman quarterback that really just got his team set on the right track, I would say, oh, it was a Josh Heupel quarterback, or it was a Lincoln Riley quarterback. A Chip Lindsey quarterback, I need to be convinced. Am I being too tough?
It's not just Chip Lindsey. It's not exactly like Sherrone Moore is an offensive guy either. But I think the interesting thing here is that, yeah, we have a lot of questions with Bryce Underwood. I mean, every metric says that he should be ultra-trained up. But we know what happens with freshmen when they come into the Big Ten. A lot of them are not going to just come in and show that talent. Now, I really like the fact that they have Mike Keene as a back, right? Because he has won big games. He has even though he played at Fresno, he's beaten good teams. So that's not something new. So you've got a guy. But also just keep in mind, like, how comically abysmal the quarterback play was here last year. They were like the worst form of Iowa and then worse than that at quarterback play. And yet they still won 8. They still went 8-5. And like a lot of their worst performances were early in the season. Now, the one thing I think you have to be really careful about Michigan is everyone wants to bet them because they finished the season beating Ohio State and beating Alabama. We talked about that earlier, right? You have to be really careful about betting teams based on a game or two at the end of the season. And I want to give all the credit into the world that team because they were a 21-point underdog. We all doubted them. We bet their wins under. It did hit just barely. We thought it was going to be free money. They were a 21-point underdog. They go into Columbus and they win the game. Ryan Day lost that game more than Michigan won it, but you still did it. Now, they beat Alabama. Like, that I don't want to hear some SEC homer telling me it's not the playoffs, so we just didn't care. I don't start with me on that. But like I'm with Robert on this team. Like I really like the pieces. And I like how it sets up to not put pressure on the quarterback. The running back room is stacked. The offensive line is really good. This is a team that can dictate tempo, that doesn't need the quarterback to automatically win them games. And the defense is really deep. Like it's not going to be the 2024 national championship defense, but like it should still be really good. And so when I look at these games, it's like Nebraska, USC, and then Ohio State. Like I think these are teams where Michigan is really, or games where Michigan is really set up to make their opponent uncomfortable with the way the defense is set up, with the way they're going to be able to control tempo. Now, I want to say it is crazy the volatility on this team because when I bet their win total, I bet it when last season was still going on, right? So I bet their win total at 8.5 as a hypothetical future back when the playoff was still going on, and I got it at -110.
Wow.
So at -110, I love 8.5. I probably wouldn't lay 180. I think this is like what Robert said. It's like how I bet Illinois, right? Like, where can I find plus money on this team? Can I take a shaker on them to make the Big Ten championship, or to do something in the playoff, right? Or if you want to take an alternate win total and try to get 9.5 and see if they win 10 games, and then you get a more reasonable line. I think that's the way to bet this team. But I'm actually pretty high on this team. I think they're going to return to form, and I think that might catch some people off guard. I feel like not a lot of people are talking about Michigan going into this season.
Interesting. All right. We had definitely different perspectives on that. Maybe I'm just getting a lot of Michigan in my feed, and I don't know. Elon's trying to just make me miserable. Imagine that. I think this team's getting overlooked quite a bit. The Michigan State Spartans. This is just according to script. Literally kind of what everybody kind of the know of the sport expected. Offense made a big jump in year one, yet still under the radar. Aiden Childs at 85 Apex. Yeah, he didn't come and set the world on fire, but he didn't stink. This is in this conference. That's fine. And I look especially here to Apex Plus when we adjust it for strength of opponent. That's fantastic. For a true freshman, I'm great with that. Their leading receiver returns. The one guy, literally the singular one guy who made Middle Tennessee like a decent offense last year, lands here, Omari Kelly. Joe Rossi, who was the guy who really turned around the Minnesota offense years ago, he improved this offense by almost 7 points in year one. These are just those foundational shifts that you expect and you don't see until year two. They were 31st in FBS and run defense in year one. Season win total is 5.5. The over is getting money, which I think is the proper play. I think this team is still way undervalued. I think they zip through the first three without much of a problem. BC has a new quarterback, so I think that's one that would concern me a little bit. But I think you've got, when you're getting to games like UCLA and Minnesota and Iowa, they're on equal footing with those three teams, and they're definitely ahead. We don't need to, again, go into how bad Maryland is. I think there's an easy path there. A pretty plausible path. Maybe I'm too optimistic here. I know the Jonathan Smith script, and I think the market's just missing, this is where we see the big step forward. Once he's got the young quarterback with a year under his belt. Isaiah, am I just being too optimistic here?
No, the thing about Michigan State is that, and it feels like this with every Michigan State sport, they're always under the radar. Like, they have one of the greatest college basketball coaches in the history of the sport, and they still fly under the radar. Like, that's just how they do it. But I said last year when they hired Jonathan Smith that I loved the hire. But I said MSU fans, because I know how MSU fans are, they panic and they red alert things immediately. Like in the early off season, it was like, oh my gosh, we can't recruit, we can't get anybody, and they were like, is Jonathan Smith on the hot seat? No, guys, come on, you need to give him some time. But I really think this is going to work out, and I think there's a lot of things to say that this team should take a significant step up this year. The thing I love about the Aiden Childs play, right, is like his worst quality was making dumb throws and throwing and turning the ball over. They, from what I've been told, are simplifying the playbook for him, right? They want him to be comfortable. They want him to just make the throws that you need to make and not like the crazy ones that you want to make. I really do trust their coaching staff to do that. I think there's a lot of experience on this team. I agree with you that they just feel like they're being slept on. Now, the weird thing about the win total, like this feels like the perfect line because I absolutely see the 5 wins. Keep in mind they almost beat Boston College at Boston College last year, and that was a better Boston College team. So I see the 3 non-conference wins. I really don't think they're going to have problems with any of those. I see UCLA and I see Maryland. There's your 5 wins. I'm not concerned about. So then you're essentially paying minus 140 to get one of those other wins. And like the games I'm looking at specifically are probably the same you're looking at Minnesota, at Iowa. I think it's going to be tough for them to win at Indiana. I don't know how I feel.
I would expand the population by 2, though. I wouldn't be surprised if they won at USC or Nebraska.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they can't. I'm not saying they can't do it. I'm just looking at like where is it most probable. Like I think they're much more likely to win at Iowa because they are to win at USC or at Nebraska. At least that's how I feel.
Yeah, it sucks that they have all those on the road too. Man,
that's the one hang up that I have with this team is that all of their 6th wins are on the road. And I'm not saying that they can't pick one up, but it's just this feels like either they're making the bowl and you really feel good, but even if we go 5-7 and a lot of those road games are competitive, man, I feel fine if I'm a Michigan State fan because this feels like it's really set up. Maybe this team is a year away or just a better schedule away, but I have no panics if I'm an MSU fan. Like I think next year this program could be set up to I don't want to say be back, but there's something here.
Yeah, as Isaiah was talking through that, it almost seems like, Robert, all right, if this team, they either just win 5 and they get stuck on that, or it almost seems like they just make a step to 7. Because if the pieces fit, the pieces are really going to fit. I love having 2. Look, these 2 receivers they have statistically are better than the 2 guys on my team. And like we lead the world in wide receivers and quarterbacks that grow in trees here in Southern California. So there's a foundation here. Do you think that almost 6 is like a magic number that they just kind of skip over?
Yeah, I could see. Yeah, like you could see this team go 5-7, or you see a team go 7-5, right? I think it's either they're better, like if they're worse than Minnesota and Iowa, so then okay, then they're 5-7. But if they're better than both of them, then you can very easily see an 8-5 here. I agree. I think the story of Jonathan Smith is that kind of slow build. He did it at Oregon State. He has clearly much more resources here. He has Aiden Childs, who's actually a pretty good quarterback, so he's developing him. I think he will be better in his second year as well. It's weird. This is a team that I'm like, okay, they're going to be better, but where do I put them? Because the top end of the Big Ten is so good, right? If this was an ACC team, I'd be like, yeah, okay, they're going to compete for the championship. But the problem is it's okay, but there's just this log jam of teams ahead of them, and they play a bunch of them. Michigan, Penn State, USC, Nebraska, even Iowa. And these are teams that I'm like, hey, I like that team. I like that team. I like that team. It's like they're behind all these teams that I like. And he usually has this reputation for kind of a slow build. He took a while to build out at Oregon State, which I think will work well here at Michigan State. But maybe this is like an Aiden Childs breakout year. Maybe they can get an 8 win somewhere. They can pick off maybe one of the USC or Nebraska, something like that. Maybe something like that. Maybe. So I don't know. This will be a better team, but it's hard for me to say, oh, this is where they are in the Big Ten. It's like They're better than some of the Big Ten teams. I think they're going to be improved, but I can't say, oh, I like them more than Indiana, or I like them more than Michigan or Penn State. Those teams are still clearly better than them. So, like, they're not in the top of the Big Ten, but they're definitely out of the bottom of the Big Ten.
Yeah, that's fair
Yeah,
to
I
say.
think there's a lot of potential for this to be team way better than record. And I think you feel good if you're a Michigan State fan on that.
Yep. Said. All right, everybody's favorite coach, PJ Fleck. How about that? I had this team vastly underrated last year. I had them 18th overall. Robert's model had them 29th, and I don't think most people even had them as that good. The new quarterback is an interesting name. It's apparently a mashup of Drake May and the aforementioned Chip Lindsey. His offensive coordinator at North Carolina is Drake Lindsey. How's this for a concern? Your top returning Ryan guy is a running back. Good job. They add 3 receivers, but none of these Ryans are like worth anything. Sorry. This team was all about the defense last year. I had them rated 11th overall. Now the big problem is I thought this is transformational. I said this is basically Jim Knowles and Mike Elko moving from Oklahoma State and from Duke respectively. I think this is the same thing. I think when you lose Corey Heatherman, you're in a bad spot. You just don't replace him. If they do an internal promotion, I'll wait and see on that. Now, I do about 120 of these, so bear with me if I don't remember all these. 6.5 over 160, I say is reasonably valued, so they must have a really easy schedule here. Okay, they start 4-0. That's where it is.
Yep.
And, okay, they start 5-1. Okay.
Yep.
And then they have, okay.
Yeah,
That seems
so you
fair.
see where that's coming from.
Yes. Yeah. I think this is the opposite of Michigan State. The regression won't be reflected in the record. Maybe it's just that simple, Isaiah.
Yeah. I guess I better be really careful with what I say because I thought Minnesota people are supposed to be like Midwestern nice, but I didn't even recommend betting against them last year on this pod. My recommendation on this was I just didn't have a play. Like I thought they would be good, not great, not bad, and apparently that made me like the world's biggest Gopher hater, according to one Gopher's Twitter. And it was weird because they came back to victory lap me when the over only hit by half a game. Like you didn't blow the bet out of the water. Okay, whatever. It's really weird because I like Darius Taylor. He's very clearly a very good running back, and yet the run game was not that great last year.
Yeah.
Which is weird for a PJ Fleck Minnesota team. You would expect the run game to be good, and especially when I didn't see the hype on Brosmer, and I don't think he wasn't bad, but he wasn't like the next great Big Ten quarterback like some people said he was going to be coming into the season. It's just shockingly how bad they were at running the ball. They scored 25 or less points in all but 3 of their games. Those 3 games were Rhode Island, Maryland, and Nevada. That's not great. So I think Drake Lindsey, like redshirt freshman, so he's not a true freshman. I do hear some good things about him, so maybe you get a little bit of improvement at the quarterback position. I don't know. I really just think it comes down to the running game being better. Like, you have to run the ball, and you have to figure out how to do that better. The defense should be really good. You see the 3 grains. There's a lot of reasons to think the defense should be good, even though they lost some star production in the secondary. They'll have to replace it, but I'm not really concerned with the PJ Fleck defense in those kind of aspects. Like, it really feels to me it's as simple as if they can run the ball, they're going to win the game. If they can't run the ball, they're going to lose the game. Now, that schedule is great. Like you said, they're going to start 5-1, barring something like if you lose to Rutgers or Purdue at home. Okay, the boat got torpedoed. Something is wrong here. So you're 5-1. You need 2 more wins out of Nebraska at home, which they do pretty well against that in the $5 broken bits of chair trophy game. That's a real thing, by the way.
Oh my God, I had never heard of that.
Yeah. They got at Iowa. That's reverse. Iowa owns them. You get Michigan State at home. That's a winnable game, even if we think Michigan State's going to be vastly improved. You've got at Northwestern. I won't spoil Northwestern, but I think they should win that game. And then you've got Wisconsin at home, and I'm sure we have lots to say about Wisconsin. I would be pretty surprised if they go under 6.5. I got it at a little bit less juice than that. I got it at -150, which is towards the upper end of what I usually play for a future, but It's really hard for me to fade this schedule, man. Like maybe there's a little bit of there's a little bit of sicko in me that's okay. I have 2 wins here. Either my bet hits and I win money,
Yeah.
or the under hits, which means something went really wrong, and then I get to go back to those gopher burners and be like, man, you couldn't win 7 games with this schedule? What's going up with your car salesman, man?
Exactly. Exactly. Robert, are you reading as much as I am into just the Corey Heatherman is leaving here? Because again, especially as Isaiah pointed out, this wasn't a great offense last year. They didn't run the ball like they usually do. Do you think that this could really fall apart without their defensive coordinator?
I actually do. The thing is, the schedule is easy, and there's the 6.5, and I probably won't play it. But like Buffalo, and many people expect that to be one of the better MAC teams. Cal, yeah, that's a problem. But Rutgers is never an easy out. You've got Ohio State, you've got Nebraska at Iowa, Michigan State could be good, Oregon, and then Northwestern and Wisconsin. So there's a way to get to 6-6 here, but I think there needs to be a consideration that like, hey, like the bottom could really fall out here. And that's the thing, like Drake Lindsay, basically a redshirt freshman. I think he had a couple of passes last year, nothing crazy. Like, this is the thing. I think people are really underselling the fact that the bottom could just fall out here, and you could be looking at like a 4-8 season potentially. If the bottom were to really fall out, if you lose to Buffalo, and then you can hit a real rough patch, and you could end up with you just beat like Northwestern State, Cal, and Northwestern, and then like maybe Wisconsin. Like the bottom, there is a chance of the bottom just falling out here. So I don't want to touch this, but at the same point in time, it's really, I don't know. I want to see how this goes, but I think the reason they were ranked so high in our models is because of that defense, and that defense is going to Miami, which is a little scary. But I have faith in Mario Cristobal to screw it up in some other way, so that's fine. But no, I don't
returns.
Yes, but no, there's got to be this has not been good for many years. Like, this has just been a mediocre Big Ten team for many years that's gotten by because they played in the Big Ten West, and now their secret weapon that no one really talked about, which was their defense, was literally keeping them in these games, is gone now. I don't know. I just got to think at some point something mean reverts. I don't know. That's my take on it. Something breaks.
The interesting thing, too, is if you think about when Minnesota broke out, I think about when I don't remember what year it was, but they fired their defensive coordinator midseason. They looked awful up until that point. They fired the defensive coordinator, and then all of a sudden it was like a switch flipped. And they had that 10-win season, was it? I think it may have been 11 after they beat Auburn in the bowl game. And then after that, they've been consistent 7-8-win team. Now, another good follow for Big Ten Twitter people, B1G Ryan, Ohio State guy. He also thinks the bottom is going to fall out on this team. So you're not the only one, Robert. And I do want to stress that like my play on the over here it's a schedule play, because I agree with you in that just my gut feeling is that there's nothing special about this team, and that's the middle ground, right? There is room for this to get worse, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Okay, if you win this, if you go 7-5, whatever, it's another Minnesota season. That's not elite, but it's not bad. But if the bottom falls out, like, man, there just could be like some really weird vibes, especially because it feels every single season there's rumors about Fleck trying to jump somewhere else.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. That wasn't that funny. Just, it's evergreen. As somebody that has the over, these are got to be the two that like make you nervous. It's the Cal and Rutgers. If you lose one of those, shit.
I honestly, it's not even if you lose one of them. If you look like, even if you're in a dogfight with Rutgers at home and you win by 3, that's not gonna feel great.
Yeah, and Cal's like just lost everything. Like, Cal is the official 2025 diaspora program. They're all over the place now.
Yeah. I also want to point out that you beat Virginia Tech in your bowl game. So, like, that doesn't mean anything at all.
Okay.
Not
fair.
Would not mean less.
Yep. All right. We've hit on these guys a few times already. Nebraska. Interesting. I've got a little bit of mixed signals here. Dylan Raiola, 73 apex, 129 in the first 5 games and 45 in the last 7. They were 12th in the conference in run offense, so that's a problem. Under Holgo, the offensive rating did improve by 3.5 points. I can tell you, as the opponent for the first game where he was calling plays, they looked a lot more scary than I'd anticipated. The wide receiver room was cleaned out. They add this guy Dane Key, which I'm of two different minds here. 365 is nice at Kentucky. That could mean like 600 at a program with a functional offensive coordinator. Might be a name to keep an eye on there. I don't like losing Tony White, the defensive coordinator. That's a problem. The John Butler hire, I'm not sure what's going on here. This guy was the defensive coordinator at Penn State a mere 12 years ago. He was a defensive backs coach on this team last year. They do avoid Oregon and Ohio State. The season win total is 7.5. The over's taking money. I'm saying it's somewhat overvalued. I think there's probably second-year Raiola in the market number here. I don't know. A lot of this comes down to, as is often the case here, probably the Michigan State game is a pivotal one here. I'm probably a little higher on them than the market. I don't know. This is not really a bettable thing to me. Just the storyline for here is basically Dylan Raiola was not as good as everybody thinks last year. He's got some catching up to be as good as people expect him to be this year. Can he get there? Now, he's got Hugo in his corner, but I don't know. It's tough. Like I said, mixed signals. You have a stronger opinion on this one, Isaiah?
No, Nebraska is very much a wait and see for me this year. Hey, if you're a Nebraska fan, that's a step up because normally Nebraska wins under for me because it hits every year. In fact, it hit last year too. It was 7.5, and they won. They won 6 games. They went 6-6. So maybe it was 6.5 actually. I think I just remember it just barely hit. Yeah. So it was something like that. But it's like I can make a case for them. I can also make a case against them. Case for them. I really like Matt Rule. It's year 3 in Matt Rule. That's typically where Matt Rule does his thing, and things get significantly better. We talked about the OC and Dana Hookerson. The offense got notably better when he took over. Satterfield was a disaster. A lot of people thought he was going to be a disaster, and he was. So it was notably better. Raiola was a true freshman last year, so I think I believe he was a true freshman last year. So I think that should be factored in. He still had really good stats overall, like 2,800 yards, 13 touchdowns. That's not exactly bad for a true freshman. Now, he's got to cut down on 11 turnovers. Cannot be doing that. There's playmakers at the wide receiver position. I'm a little concerned at how mediocre the run game looks like it's going to be. There's nothing special about this running back room. There's nothing special about the offensive line. It's okay. It's not great. So there's pressure on Raiola not just to be good, but also the potential that he's not getting any help and he's under siege. The defense should be really good. The run defense was top 10 last year. Easily was their best characteristic. They got some good transfers in. So I think the defense will be pretty solid, even though they don't really have any elite guys, right? Like it's a lot of good, great, but not outstanding. For that reason is why I'm just in wait-and-see mode. I'm also looking at their schedule, right? And it's like there's a lot of good and a lot of bad. Like Cincinnati, Akron, Houston, Christian. That should be 3 wins. But then you get all these games here at home, right? It's like Michigan, that's tough, but you get them at home. Michigan State, probably a better team, but you get them at home. Then you go on the road to Maryland. We don't need to rehash them. Go on the road to Minnesota. Winnable game. We've talked about them. Then you get Northwestern. Winnable game. USC at home. At UCLA. Like we have a lot of games that are very winnable. Yeah. I just don't know if the value is in here betting them. Like I feel comfortable with a wait and see on them. Maybe they surprise people and they really smash that win total, and then we feel really good about them going into next year. Like I think at the worst for Nebraska and feeling good for Nebraska fans is this is a team that shouldn't just crap themselves in new and inventive ways. And that's probably, if you think about it, they should have beat Ohio State last year. And they just refused to do it. Like they had every chance to beat Ohio State, and they just found every way not to do it. Like I think at least they shouldn't have that problem this year.
I forgot that was at Ohio State too.
Yeah. And I was watching that game, and like for the first 2.5 quarters, it was like, no, they're playing well, but it's not going to happen. And then for a brief moment in the third quarter, I was like, oh, they got OSU a little worried here. This is getting uncomfortable. And the OSU Twitter people are coming out with, this is the end of Ryan Day. And then they just did what Nebraska does.
You can't get all the Scott Frost out of the program in just 2 years. It takes that whole second year.
But you can get Scott Frost talking about them in his press conferences.
That was classy. Robert, I guess you can share my concern about Raiola not being as good as everybody thinks?
Yeah, I do share that concern. I'm somewhat less concerned about it, though. Again, it is a thing. Those were his basically first starts in college football. Yep. And again, I'll read through what they were. It was UTEP, Colorado, and Northern Iowa. And again, definitely not a murderer's row there. Weirdly, they only beat Colorado 28-10, but I think they were up 21-0 at half or something like that. Like they just basically let up on Colorado in the second half.
Yeah.
That game felt like, watching that game, it felt like it was going to be like 40 something, and they just didn't do that. But that's fine. I think. But then immediately after those games, and you've got Illinois, Indiana, Ohio State, UCLA, USC, and then in Iowa, right? So, yeah, okay, 45 Apex against a combination of Indiana and Ohio State, 2 CFP teams. USC, never an easy one, and then on Iowa. Like, that's not horrible, actually. That's not actually horrible. Mm-hmm. And again, when Holgerson came in, he was able to do some stuff. So I'm circling week 1. I've actually already bet that they're minus 6.5 against Cincinnati. That seems absurdly low for at least what they were able to do early season. But just looking at the schedule, like, if you can beat Michigan in week 4, and actually that's without Sharon Moore, because Sharon Moore he's doing his self-suspension that week. And then, okay, you have USC on the schedule, but then you actually have a bye week before Penn State. There's a scenario where this team is like 11-1 going up against Iowa. That is crazy. Sorry, yeah, 10-1. Yeah, sorry. They didn't add an extra game. No, they're 10-1 going into Iowa. And there's a very, obviously, but weird things always happen in that game. It's always determined by a field goal for some reason. But no, like, the schedule is there. The path is there. Mm-hmm. I'm unsure. Like, this team, I think, should be getting more hype than what it actually is. There is a non-zero chance this team could be, like, if they can get past Michigan, their only loss in the schedule is, like, really Penn State. If they beat Michigan, this team has a pretty clear path to the CFP. Even the Big Ten championship game, depending, right? Like, they don't have to play Ohio State. They don't have to play Oregon. All they have to do is play Penn State, and we all know Penn State is pretty wishy-washy at any given time. Like, we know they have a bad game in them. And could it be them? Yeah, it could be. Like, it
could be at Penn State, at home.
Yeah, that's true. But this is the thing. I don't know. I think this team should have been better last year. I think they were better than their record said last year. Again, they should have taken out Ohio State. And it's crazy that there were so many games where Ohio State looked so weak and so vulnerable, and yet they won everything. They won the championship last year, in a year in which they looked horrible through most of it. But this is the thing. They just figured it out at the end, and they did that. No, I don't think I like the over 7.5. I think I'd rather take shots on go to CFP, go to the playoff, make it to the big. I'm not sure if you can make the Big Ten championship game, but get to CFP. I think I'd rather take that future than like an over 7.5.
I agree with Robert there. I wouldn't bet the win total, but I think there's a case to take some shots on them. And like I said, it's year 3 in Matt Rule. That's usually when things happen. I agree with you on them. This is not a team I would fade. Let's go with that. I think they're either going to be really good or they're going to be good enough.
As Robert was making that point, I thought about something that you spoke about earlier, Isaiah. And I'm not saying that this is this year's Indiana, but the schedule parallels are there. I think we could look up and say, Nebraska's 10-2. What on earth?
And I guarantee you that here's what's really going to make Indiana fans mad. If Nebraska's 10-2, nobody's going to be arguing against them for the playoffs. Nobody. Even though it's been a long time since Nebraska's been relevant.
Yeah. Agree. Okay, I think we got one more here in part 1. Yeah. This is going to be quick for me. I don't know who Preston Stone pissed off to wind up in this horrible situation, but congratulations, sir. He did have a great apex at SMU in 2023, and he had one start last year for SMU and was benched after that. This just was the worst just all around just the worst offense in the conference. Congratulations. They're last in Ryan, so congratulations. Enjoy that, Preston Stone. You're not going to have anything near the receivers you had at SMU. Defense, I think they'll be okay under Braun. Not that they'll be dominant, but I don't think that'll be the weak point of this team. I just don't have a lot of interest in this program. 3.5 over 180, overvalued, but I don't feel strongly enough to bet it. If I look at the real quick here, what are the Western Illinois? I don't even know if they're a shoo-in to beat ULM, who has some challenges. I don't know. The proverbial, if Robert gave me $100, I'd bet the under at plus money here is probably the play. You're nodding, Isaiah.
Yeah, this is tough, man, because it's like first of all, who roots against Northwestern? Other than Illinois fans, who goes into the season and is, gosh, I hope Northwestern's going to be bad this year. And like they had such a great first year with Braun, right? With the way that Fitzgerald got canned and the scandal, and everybody was like, that's going to be one of the worst teams in college football. And then they come out and win 7-8 games. But the problem with teams like that is how much of that is emotion? How much of that is just like raw, like energy? And I make a lot of, because as you both know, basketball is really my sport too, along with football. I make a lot of comparisons to college basketball, and Ohio State basketball did the same thing. They fired their coach and they promoted the interim guy, and the first thing he does is have his Super Bowl against my Purdue Boilermakers. They were ranked number 3, and he goes and he beats them. And all of a sudden he's hired. And then there's all this hype about them, and they were decisively mediocre last year. And now there's a bunch of hype about them this year, and I think they're going to be decisively mediocre again. And Northwestern's not even decisively mediocre. They were awful last year. They were the worst offense in the conference. Again, they were worse than Purdue at offense. And it was like not even, this team is just bad. Like they were unwatchably bad. The only thing that they did right was, and boy, we talked about this. They went to Maryland and won 37-10.
Foreboding.
Their first game of the season last year was Miami, and they won it 13-6. And that felt like a highlight. That was probably the best team they beat last year. And I have no reason to think that they're going to be any better. Could Preston Stone be really good? Maybe, but what has he shown? Like, first, also, don't confuse them. I've seen some people be like, I saw him melt down against Penn State. That wasn't him. So don't confuse him with that guy. But I don't think there's enough in there for me to think he's going to come into a situation where there's basically no weapons and just turn this around. They also have a new offensive coordinator, if I remember correctly.
How could you possibly fire the last guy? Look at that great job he did. I'm joking.
Right. Yeah, so they brought in a guy, but he's coming in from South Dakota State. So it's a good FCS program, but it's an FCS program. The one interesting thing you do have on defense, if I'm familiar with this, is they get Yanni Karlaftis, yes, related to George Karlaftis coming in. Dude is a really good player, brutally misused last year, like most of the good players that were on Purdue's roster. So you got him. You got some good players on the line, but I can't make a case for this team. I don't think they're going to be good. I don't think they're going to be fun. And, also, you did yourself no favors. You start at Tulane. Sucks. And also, by the way, you have no home field advantage. Like, they normally don't have a home field advantage, but they have no home field. They're playing on the lacrosse field on the lake.
They still haven't finished that thing yet?
Yeah. Now, the new stadium looks great. It's going to be done for next year, and the renders and the current progress looks great. But that new stadium is going to get taken over by opposing fan bases, too. That's just what happened. So you even look at this. At least we get Purdue at home, but, the crowd's going to be all Purdue fans. So, the best game you feel about is still going to feel like an away game. I don't see it. I don't think I would bet. I certainly wouldn't bet the over at minus 180. I don't like betting under 3.5 just because there's a lot of volatility. If you gave me the money, I would probably bet the under. But yeah, I feel nothing about this.
Yeah. Robert Preston Stone, my gosh, he's going to be just dying to have anybody that can get open here, right?
Yeah, he did a lot of really rough things last year. I think his only start was against BYU, and they lost that game, and then he basically got benched after that. We were pretty hyped with Preston Stone to be at SMU, and then he really did bad. And I think SMU is a good team with good coaching, and Northwestern is not a good team with not good coaching. So that is already a massive negative. Yeah, anything where it's, oh, you can get coached up to some level, that's not happening here. No, I think 3.5 is tough here because again, you do have Western Illinois, you have ULM, and ULM could actually be not half bad, and Tulane probably
No.
beats you actually.
Yeah, is there a look-ahead line
They're
on that
going to
one?
be decisively favored.
It's
What
got
is
to
the
be two.
line? In
It's got to be 2 scores. Has to be.
Yeah, I think so. They're going to be sizable underdogs in that game.
Let me see if I can find that game here. One second.
And I'm going to be in the state of Indiana when that game is happening. So I will be picking that game.
They are 6.5-point favorites.
Oh my gosh! Wait, they
Tulane?
who?
No,
Tulane is?
Tulane is 6.5. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a
that-
play. That will certainly be a play.
Yep.
That's at
Definitely.
noon. Big.
The
noon.
way yeah.
Pretty sure that's not the big noon game. It's a noon game. A small noon game.
It's just like, how do you feel good when the outlook on your season is, boy, I really hope that UCLA regresses, and I really hope Purdue stays bad. And even then, you're still only looking at 4 wins.
Yeah.
That's tough.
No,
Yeah,
I
that's-
like that.
Yeah,
And again, it's
too late.
because I genuinely like Northwestern. It's hard to not like them.
Actually, yeah, it's at Tulane. Why do they go to Tulane?
Yeah,
Like, you're a big
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't know. If it does make anybody feel any better, they're making a lot of money on ticket sales because they've super inflated their ticket prices. They
Anyway.
want $160 for the Purdue game.
Jeez.
Oh my gosh.
But that's a lot to pay for something you can get online for a streaming service for free, which is arguably too much to pay for this. No, I think this is bad. I think this is going to be a walkover opponent for all the Big Ten, and yeah, I wouldn't. Yeah, if you gave me free money, I might bet this, and if this bet under was like a bit closer to plus 150, plus 160, maybe. But there's so many things where, yeah, maybe they could beat UCLA. If Purdue was bad, maybe they could beat Purdue. Maybe they could beat Minnesota, right? Like, it's just like you could easily, and then Western Illinois, it's an FCS team, they have to be an FCS team. So there's a path to get to 4, but it's not a fun path. And yeah,
You say that, but they've lost to Illinois State in not too distant of a memory. Now, Western Illinois is generally a very bad FCS team, but I'm just saying.
yeah,
Yeah, I talked you in a little bit into ULM in the Sun Belt, so I think that might be like the one to look out for. That might be the surprise. Oh my God, this is really really bad team. This is also a team that's dying, just gasping for a Maryland on their schedule. They could really use one of those instead of just even like a Minnesota or whatever. Just something that's closer to winnable. All right, that concludes part 1. We will be back with part 2 in a separate episode. So thank you for being with us, and we will see you in part 2.